The city pulsed like a living heart, its veins made of traffic lights and restless avenues. In its highest towers, power was measured in fortunes and silent handshakes. But behind the brilliance of money, there are stories that no spotlight dares to reveal. Tonight, one of those stories was about to begin, one that would pierce arrogance and uncover a love no one believed possible. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love hearing from you and always read every message. The night draped the city in silver and shadow. From the 48th floor, the gala hall seemed suspended in the sky. Crystal chandeliers dripped golden light onto tables covered in linen, where glasses of French wine reflected like tiny suns. The air was thick with expensive perfumes and sharp laughter, full of the arrogance of those who believed wealth was destiny, not earned. At the center, seated prominently, was Adrian Valmont, still young for the weight of his empire, yet with eyes that had already witnessed silent battles. His black suit was impeccable, his Swiss watch glinting under the light, but none of it filled the emptiness behind his serious expression. Among hurried waiters and pompous guests entered Isabella Duarte. She carried a tray with steady hands, though the simple uniform dress could not hide the dignity in her walk. Her worn shoes clashed with the polished marble floor, yet each step she took was a silent challenge to the disdain surrounding her. Then Victor Legrand, Adrian's partner, raised his voice, dripping with sarcasm. "Look at this. Even here they bring memories of the suburbs," he said, casting a cruel glance at Isabella. Laughter echoed like lashes in the air. Some discreetly raised their phones, filming the scene as if the humiliation were entertainment. Blushing, Isabella remained silent. The tray trembled slightly in her hands, but did not fall. There was a hidden flame in her brown eyes, something that not even the cruelest laughter could extinguish. Adrian watched quietly. To everyone else, she was invisible. To him, there was a rare strength there, a muted courage that intrigued him. And when the hall erupted in laughter, Isabella's eyes shone subtly, as if announcing a fate that no one in that room was ready to face. The hall continued to sway with classical music, but the soft piano notes barely masked the venom of the conversations. Wine flowed, jokes circulated, and amid the golden luxury, glances fell like blades on the young waitress daring to exist in a world that was not hers. Victor Legrand, holding a glass, raised his voice, drawing attention, as if the entire hall were merely a stage for his spectacle of cruelty. "Tell me, my friends," he said, smiling maliciously, "what do you think a girl like this knows about French wines?" The provocation sparked in the air. Laughter arose, some discreet, others loud. Isabella paused for a moment, pressing the tray against her body. "Come here, girl," Victor ordered, extending a glass of ruby wine. "Tell me, is this a Bordeaux or a Bourgogne?" The hall exploded in excited murmurs. Phones rose discreetly, ready to record the young woman's fall before the golden audience. Isabella took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the glass. The blush rose to her cheeks, but there were no tears, only a quiet determination that no one expected. "Come on, answer," Victor insisted, feigning patience, like one putting on a show. "Show us if you can at least tell what you're drinking." Laughter rippled through the hall like fire. Adrian Valmont remained motionless in his chair, but his fingers tapped lightly on the table, a contained rhythm. His gaze was not on the wine, nor on the guests. It was on Isabella. He sensed her discomfort, but also saw something greater, a stubborn pride refusing to bow. Isabella lifted her eyes. For the first time, she looked directly at Victor. There was no arrogance in her expression, only firmness, the same strength that emerges when someone has been tested 1,000 times by life. No one believed she would dare answer. But the silence that followed spread through the hall like fire about to consume every laugh. The entire hall held its breath, waiting for the stumble. Victor Legrand's cruel smile celebrated in advance, as if holding prey against the wall. Isabella held the glass firmly. She brought the wine to her nose, closed her eyes for a moment, and inhaled deeply. The aroma was intense, almost aggressive, but she was not intimidated. When she opened her eyes again, there was a calm flame, as if she had found the thread of an answer amid the chaos. "You don't have to be rich to know sense," she said, softly but firmly. "This is a Bordeaux." The hall fell silent for a moment. Laughter shattered in the air like broken glass. Victor raised his eyebrows, surprised, but quickly disguised it with a theatrical laugh. "Well, well," he said, leaning forward. "So the girl has the nose of a sommelier? How convenient!" Some guests laughed again, but now there was something different in the air. Discomfort, a trace of doubt. And it was in this brief silence that Adrian Valmont let slip the smallest gesture, a slight raise of his eyebrow, almost imperceptible, but not unnoticed by Isabella. Victor, noticing the subtle shift, did not want to concede. "Since you're so confident," he provoked, with a merciless glint in his eyes, "tell us, girl, what vintage is it?" The hall erupted in excited murmurs. Phones rose again, hungry for the final fall. There was no way she could know. Isabella looked at the glass again. The blush spread across her cheeks, and for the first time, the tray in her other hand seemed heavy. But she did not step back. Her eyes briefly sought Adrian's face, and found not laughter nor judgment, but an intriguing serenity, almost like a silent invitation to stand firm. And when everyone believed she would falter, something shone in her eyes, a secret about to be revealed. The silence weighed like lead in the hall. The raised glasses awaited Isabella's fall, eager to turn her hesitation into a spectacle. But the young woman breathed deeply, brought the wine to her lips, and let it rest on her tongue for a moment. Her eyes closed, and for a second, the entire hall seemed to vanish. When she spoke again, her voice was calm, almost poetic. "It's a Bordeaux, 2009 vintage. Strong, yet matured enough to reveal notes of leather and dark fruits." The words fell like stones in water, sending ripples no one expected. There was a collective murmur. Some guests exchanged incredulous looks, others furrowed their brows, suspicious. Victor Legrand froze for a moment, his smile locked. Then he forced a laugh too loud, trying to mask his surprise. Well, she must have read that somewhere, right?" he said, attempting to ridicule. Probably memorized phrases to impress, but his voice no longer carried weight. The hall was divided. Some observed Isabella with new, if restrained, respect. Others simply remained silent, disturbed by the possibility that the poor girl had spoken the truth. It was then that Adrian Valmont moved for the first time. With absolute calm, he raised his own glass, swirling the wine against the golden light. He brought it to his lips, tasted, and placed the glass on the table. His silence was so powerful that every gaze turned to him. "She is right," he said, with a tranquility that cut through the air. "Bordeaux, 2009. The hall stood motionless. Adrian's word was law. His confirmation sealed Isabella's victory, even against Victor's arrogance. For a moment, laughter vanished. The atmosphere changed, heavy, dense, as if everyone were aware that something greater had begun. Victor tried to laugh again, but the sound died in his throat. For the first time, his posture wavered. It wasn't just knowledge, it was dignity. And suddenly, the entire hall fell silent, as if witnessing the birth of something no one could contain. Adrian Valmont's words echoed through the hall like an incontestable seal. If he said Isabella was right, no one dared to doubt. The silence that followed was not just respect, it was bewilderment. For the first time that night, power did not rest on money, but on the voice of a young woman who should not have even existed in that setting. Victor Legrand felt the blow hit his pride. His smile broke, giving way to a furious gaze, fierce as a cornered animal. "This is ridiculous!" he shouted, standing from his chair. "We're supposed to believe that a suburban waitress has the palate for wines worth more than her entire house." Some guests laughed nervously, but most stayed silent. The discomfort lingered. There was something in Isabella's stance that made it impossible to ignore her. She, however, did not retreat. Holding the tray against her chest as if it were a shield, she lifted her eyes to Victor and spoke firmly. "I don't need wealth to know the world, Mr. Legrand. You just have to observe, listen, and live." Her words, simple yet sharp, pierced the hall like an arrow. A collective sigh spread, almost a shiver. Victor turned red, the glass trembling in his hand. He could not bear being challenged, least of all in front of Adrian, the partners, the elite who always applauded him. "Insolent!" he shouted, spilling wine onto the linen. "Who does she think she is, speaking to me like that?" Isabella inhaled deeply. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. "I am someone who has been hungry, sir. Someone who knows the value of every penny and every opportunity. Maybe that is little in your world, but in mine, it is everything." The hall fell completely silent. No one laughed. No one filmed. Even the pianist, unaware, let out a wrong note, as if tension had infected every corner of the room. Adrian Valmont did not take his eyes off her. There was no pity in his gaze, only deep respect, as if, for the first time in a long while, something inside him had begun to breathe again. Victor, in despair, tried to seek applause, but guests averted their eyes. The laughter that had supported him had vanished. The stage that was his began to crumble. But the final blow did not come from Victor's anger. It came from the simple truth of Isabella, a truth everyone there had tried to forget. The hall remained silent, heavy, uncomfortable. Isabella's words still echoed between the crystal walls, far stronger than any laugh or music. Victor Legrand, now flushed and breathless, tried to regain the authority slipping through his fingers, but no one followed him. Guests diverted their eyes, feigning interest in their glasses, unable to sustain the collective shame they had witnessed. Isabella, for her part, did not seek victory. She merely adjusted the tray against her body, took a deep breath, and did something few would expect, bowed slightly, in a gesture of courtesy. "Excuse me," she said calmly, and turned her back to the hall. Each step she took sounded like a silent challenge, reverberating on the polished marble. There was no hurry, no humiliation, only dignity. As she walked away, the chandelier lights reflected in her loose hair, as if the very room acknowledged her strength. It was at that moment that Adrian Valmont stood. The simple action drew every gaze, tense and curious. He said little. He merely took the handkerchief from his suit pocket, folded it calmly, and placed it over the wine stain Victor had left on the table. A simple gesture. Yet everyone understood. Adrian had silenced Victor's uncontrolled fury without words, and marked his position beside the young woman. No speeches, no confrontation, just true power, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be recognized. Victor stood still, his face aflame, swallowing his own defeat. Not a word escaped his lips. Isabella had already left the hall, but the image of her walking with dignity remained etched in every guest's eyes, and in Adrian's more than anyone else's. And when Adrian followed toward the exit, none of the attendees dared to laugh again, for all had understood, too late, what they had truly witnessed. The city awoke unaware that the previous night, something had changed forever. The newspapers did not report it. The social columns ignored it. Yet among those who had been in the Golden Hall, the episode spread like a spark no one could extinguish. They said the waitress had faced the cruelty of one of the most influential men in the country, and won. Others whispered about Adrian Valmont's serenity, who had sealed the truth with a single phrase and a symbolic gesture, leaving everyone stunned. In the suburbs, Isabella Duarte awoke early, as always. Life remained harsh, bills to pay, a sick mother, exhausting work. Yet something inside her had changed. For the first time, she felt her voice carried weight, that her dignity could reach even the tallest walls of the city. Meanwhile, Adrian, alone in his glass-covered penthouse, gazed out as the first golden rays touched the buildings. He, who had everything money could buy, felt he had encountered something that no fortune could give: authenticity. The two worlds were still distant, separated by wealth, customs, and social eyes. But in the silence of the early morning, both carried the memory of that instant when their eyes met and recognized one another, not as millionaire and waitress, not as powerful and poor, but as two human beings who, unexpectedly, had truly seen each other. In the highest circles, Victor Legrand became the subject of veiled jokes. His arrogance was exposed, his rage ridiculed. The man who had always dominated halls with laughter and cruelty now walked surrounded by false respect, fragile as crystal. Meanwhile, Isabella carried within her something greater than any humiliation, the certainty that her story was only beginning. And Adrian, from his golden world, knew that the encounter with her had not been chance, but destiny. In a world blinded by arrogance and power, a single act of silent dignity was enough to alter the course of two lives, and perhaps to remind everyone that true value is not measured in gold, but in the courage to stand tall.